Hi, I'm Felicia with Felicia Paints, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's go over some basics of watercolor. We'll go over how I like to set up my paint station and a few techniques that we use over and over again. So grab some paints, grab your boxes, let's get started. So let's really quick talk about the basics. When I paint with Felicia Paints, I always like to set up my station in a certain way. This is what works for me, and I feel like it works for a lot of other people too. You're always welcome to set up your station however works best for you, but this just keeps everything in a compact place where I can reach all the materials that I need so that I can create exactly what I'm aiming for. So right here, I'm right-handed, so I keep all of these materials right here over on my right-hand side. If you're left-handed, I want these materials over on this side. You'll find that it's a lot easier to paint when you've got all of your painting supplies on your dominant hand side. It makes it easier so that you're not dragging your hand through the painting or dripping paint across the paper. It also just makes it easier so that you can reach everything just really quickly, all right there. Over here on my left-hand side, because I'm right-handed, if you're left-handed, flip this over here. I've got all of this material. You can have out whatever you feel like you want to have out when you paint. I definitely recommend having your reference photo. The reference photo is a good way to see what you're trying to paint, kind of what the end goal is. It never has to look exactly like this, but I do find that a lot of times our brains are like, what do I do with this piece of paper? I don't know what's happening. But if you have a little bit of direction on where you're kind of heading and trying to go, it makes it a little bit easier to get it from your brain and your hands out onto your paper. So it's a good way to kind of have that, just give yourself, a direction of where you're going. If I like to send these cards, they're motivation cards. This one says you are enough. They all come at random, so you'll get whatever card belongs to you whenever you get your kit. But I love sending these motivation cards just because sometimes we just need that little extra push. You know what? Maybe I'm feeling a little bit scared, and maybe I'm feeling like I'm not good enough to create this painting and make it look like what I want it to, but you know what? I am enough. You are enough, and I believe that you are. So whatever cards you get is exactly what I believe you need, and I can't wait to find out what yours was. Here, of course, we've got a business card. The business card, obviously, like, you've got this. You're like, okay, I'm here. I don't need a business card. The business card's not necessarily for you. The business card here is for you to pass along so that if somebody else, if you're like, hey, you know what? My friend over there across the street, they totally would love to do watercolor. Or you know what? Maybe it's your best friend that lives across the country. You guys can do this together. You can both set up the videos, hop on a FaceTime call or whatever, and then just chat while you paint together, even if you're 1,000 miles away. So this is just a great activity to do with other people. So feel free to pass this business card along to anyone who you think might want to watercolor with us. Additionally, it's got my website and my social and email and everything on there. All my social handles like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever are all felicia.paints. So Felicia, then a little period, and then paints. You'll find everything there, and I can't wait. Tag your stuff. I want to see your creations. I want to see your setup when you're like, yes, I did it. I set it up. It looks amazing. I can't wait to see that. So feel free to share that with me at any time. You can send me personal messages. You can share it with your friends and family and your followers, whatever you want to do, but I would love to see it. So tag me. And then also, if you're a subscriber, you get a monthly sticker. So definitely check out a subscription box. If you are just here with a one-time kit, you'll love the subscription boxes. They come with 4 new projects every single month, different things, different paints, not different paints, we use these, but different colors of paint. So you'll get this a whole collection. You get your brushes and materials with your first kit, and then after that, just the other supplies, and you'll reuse your brushes, your pen, and your paint well. So those all come in there. Awesome sticker. Sometimes you get other surprise bonuses as well. So when you're a subscriber, you just get cool things. So anyway, check out subscription. The link for the subscription is in the description of this video below. So check that out there. Right here, I've got this blank paper, but you may or may not have an outline, a taped paper, or whatever you need for the project you're working on. All of those come in the kit, ready to go, ready to paint, so that you don't have to figure out what you're doing. Let me just show you some here. We've got a grasshopper, come in past kits, some lipstick that's upside down. We've got a heart outline, also upside down, cool. We've got like this paper crane. So whatever you need for your kit is gonna come in your kit all ready to go. All you have to do is pull it out, set up this little setup right here, and you're ready to go. Again, in the kits, you get all the paints that you need for that project. So right here, I've got 3 paints that would come to make this project here. So whatever you need, you know, you can find that subscription link again in the description right below this video. Here, let me show you all the paintbrushes that come in your first kit. So your first kit, you get 4 paintbrushes. You get this wide angle paintbrush, get a number 6 round brush, a number 2 round brush, and a number 0 round brush. You also get a paint well and this mermaid tail pen. So the mermaid tail pen is here. Oops, everything rolls away. The mermaid tail pen is here so you can sign your paintings. Occasionally we do some outline stuff, but it's got this beautiful tip and some amazing ink in there. It writes so well. Plus, it's just cute. Like, I love cute things. So here we are with this cute mermaid tail pen. It may or may not have a fish head, but I like to focus on the beautiful tail right here. So mermaid tail pen is there to sign your paintings. When we have our paints, these are concentrated, if they are all falling over, these are concentrated liquid watercolors, okay? So watercolors you've probably seen, like the cakes in the pans and stuff like that before. You may have seen tube watercolors as well. We occasionally paint with tube watercolors, occasionally paint with cakes or pans, but for the most part we use these liquid watercolors. So these are super concentrated, like highly concentrated watercolors, so a little bit goes a long way. When I get my bottles, I always shake them before I put my paint in my paint wells. When I'm shaking these bottles, it just makes sure that pigment is all mixed together, because occasionally they'll like to separate. Happens a lot with yellows and reds, occasionally with other colors. But then I usually just start with 3 drops of paint. So I'm going to take this one, this is called Slate Blue, and I'm just going to drop 3 drops of paint right in there, just so I can show you a few basic techniques so that you can use this on your paintings in the future. Once I use my paint, I just put it out to the side because I don't need it right away and I don't want it taking up space in my working paint area. So I'm going to just take these brushes right here. I'm going to grab my paintbrush that I've already used here and use that. So let's talk about water. Water with watercolor is incredibly important. You might have guessed, it's in the name, watercolor. So we use water with our watercolor. It does a few things. It gets you the right consistency of your paint so that it moves and flows across the paper. It gets you the right color of your paint so that you can get the right lightness or darkness for whatever you are working on. But the watercolor is just a super important part. Without the water in the watercolor, the paint just doesn't sit correctly on the paper. It doesn't soak in the right way. The water just helps it react how it's supposed to. So when we use our water, these cute water jars I sell in my shop, also link in the description below, FeliciaPaints.com/shop. You can check that out, but I've got these cute water jars and they are fantastic. They're super sturdy. They've got a nice little lip on the edge to help you when you're changing colors and needing to get water off your paintbrush and things like that. They're very sturdy. They sit really nicely and aren't going to slide around. And bonus, I've never accidentally mistaken this jar for my drinking water. You might find that as an artist, that sometimes you'll go to like get a drink and you'll accidentally drink your paint water, or you'll accidentally stick your paintbrush in your drinking water. So this just kind of helps alleviate that, because it's like very obvious, this is my paint water jar and that is my cup or whatever it is. So anyway, I love these. Grab yourself one, you won't regret it. Anyway, let's talk about getting water on our paintbrush. So getting water on your paintbrush is super important. You want to load your paintbrush with water and then put paint on it to be able to achieve the watercolor techniques that you are trying to achieve. So what I like to do is I call it the nail polish wipe technique. So you might hear that in paint tutorial videos that you watch later on. But what I do is I take my paintbrush and I stick it in my water. I can swirl it, swish it, lightly scrub it along the bottom. Whatever I want to do, I want to get water in that paintbrush. Once I've got that water in the paintbrush, you can see it's dripping, and we don't usually need that much water when we're painting. So once I get that paintbrush wet, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wipe one side of my paintbrush, and then I'm going to wipe the other side of my paintbrush. All right, just like you would with nail polish. You dip it in, you wipe one side and the other, and then you go ahead and you paint your nails, right? So here I do that same thing. Wipe one side, flip it over, wipe the other side, and now I've got just about the right amount of water to go ahead and use my watercolor. So here, let me show you with this Slate Blue. I'm going to take this watercolor brush right here and just get a little bit of paint. So you can see there, it's just the very tip of my brush. A little bit of this paint goes a very long way. Like I said before, it's concentrated watercolor, so you don't need a lot to cover a lot of area. So here we're going to start with just a quick value study. A value study is just watching the lightness and the darkness of the color. So with this slate blue right here, I'm just gonna take that paintbrush, and I'm gonna start right here and go from left to right, right to left, up to down. Doesn't really matter. But I'm just gonna go from one side to the other. I forgot to mention, when you're holding your paintbrush, if you're unsure of how to hold your paintbrush properly, do whatever feels most comfortable. But if you're unsure of where to start on that, let's just talk about our paintbrush real quick. So we've got our paintbrush handle here and our bristles over here. So with our handle, these paintbrushes that I use, I love because they're really good to just visualize and see everything that you need to do. But I just hold my paintbrush just like a pencil in this yellow part of my paintbrush. That's where I hold it most often. Occasionally, if I want a wider, looser paint stroke, I will hold back here in the blue section. And if I want a tighter detailed stroke, sometimes I will hold up in this metal section right here. So that's how I hold my paintbrush. With our bristles here, we've got the belly of our brush, which is this main part here, and the tip of our brush, which is this end right here. So when I use the tip of my brush or the belly of my brush, you know what I'm talking about. So here I've created this value. It's a nice like gradient or ombre, whatever kind of word you want to use for it. But here it goes from dark, medium to very light. So let's practice making these same colors without having to do this tutorial. So I'm going to load my brush up with water again. So that I do that nail polish wipe, get it wet, wipe one side and the other. So now I've done that, and I'm going to load it up with paint. So again, just putting the tip in and getting that little bit of paint. So right here, it's very easy to just make that dark color. That's what we've done there, okay? If I don't want to have to pull that paint out every time, I can get that dark color on my brush and then dip it in my water and just shake it off a little. Okay, so I've got a little bit of water and a little bit of paint in there, and when I paint it right here, it gives us that nice medium color. Okay, so we've got our dark, we've got our medium, and then if we do our light, we dip it again, and this time we'll just wipe it off a little bit. When we go to put that paint down, it gives us that light color. If we want to go even lighter, just do it again. Dip it and wipe it off, and now you're basically painting with water at this point, but if you're going for that really light, very pastel wash, that's what you want right there. So that's a really good, just easy way to create a few of those different values when you're putting them on your paper. You've got your scratch paper over here. We talked about this a little bit. You've got our water, our scratch paper, and our paper towel. They're all really good tools to use. The scratch paper helps us to test out our colors, test out our techniques so that we know what we're doing before we commit to putting them onto our final painting. I like having the scratch paper just because it gives me more confidence. It gives me just that confidence knowing I'm sure what color I'm putting on my paper. Because if I go like this and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this light color, but I just get a little bit of water and I go to put it down and I'm like, oh, it's so dark. That may not be what you're going for. And so you kind of just wanna make sure you've got a little bit of that confidence and just practice. Maybe you're like, okay, I wanna practice with the tip of my brush. So with the tip of your brush, you're just gonna take this tip and keep it very perpendicular to the paper and just make a very thin line. Okay, so you can make those very thin lines. You can practice pushing down and pulling up to make kind of leaf-like, grass-like strokes. Okay, another thing we're going to practice really quick is called the wet on wet technique. So there's a couple of ways to do this. The first one we're going to do is just take some water. So this is just water on my paintbrush. I'm going to go right here and I'm going to paint myself a circle. So you can probably see just the shininess of that circle. You can tell it's wet. It has water on it and it'll start to dry because this is a cotton paper and it'll soak it up. What I'm going to do is just take a little bit of that paint right here and I'm just going to drop it on one side of that circle right there that I just painted with water. So I just took wet, which was my water, and I put more wet on top of it. Okay, so this up here is called wet on dry because you're just putting that wet paint onto a dry surface. Here with that wet on wet, it's going to give you that bleed area, which is really fun. So I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it opposite. So I'm going to get paint on my paintbrush this time, and I'm going to paint myself another circle, fill that in. Okay, and now I'm going to take just some water and drop in water. Okay, so I'm going to drop that water just right there. And you can see it's going to start pushing that paint around, and it does some really cool, really fun stuff. So you can always drop that water in, drop some more in, see how it's pushing the paint outwards. So now you're getting a little bit of the opposite of this, where it's just pushing outwards and making some cool stuff there. Another thing that we're gonna just kind of go over really quick is just a few more techniques. I just want to show you guys a few things so that you feel prepared to go on and paint more tutorials. When I teach the different tutorials that come with all of your kits, I do show whatever you need to learn for that specific painting. So don't feel like if you didn't watch the basics video all the way, or you didn't pick up everything or can't remember it all in the future, that you'll be totally like out of luck, because you won't. I teach everything in every video so that you understand what you need for that specific painting. This is just to kind of show you, you know, what's going on. So here we're going to take this again, and we're going to paint another circle. Okay, so this one, I'm painting that circle, then I'm cleaning my brush off, okay? I'm gonna just have water on my brush, and I'm gonna take this water and I'm gonna fill in and just touch those edges of that circle. What that's gonna do is it's gonna pull the lighter color in and just fill that color in. Another thing I wanna show you as well is right here. If I take this, like there, guys, there's lots. We're just gonna go over a couple more, but I'm gonna just take this and I'm just gonna paint a line right through here. Okay, so I'm starting on one side and just going all the way through. I just want you to see what happens when you paint over another color. So we're gonna do that. Nope, never mind with that. We're gonna do that, and then I'm gonna paint another color right over the top of this section right here. But this time I'm gonna fill in the entire section, okay? So I'm filling in the whole section with that water and that paint that I just put on my brush. It's very light as well, which is fine, but I'm just making sure to go to the edges of that section, okay? So when I go to the edges of that section, what it's gonna do is it's not gonna leave a water line towards the edge of what I just painted. Here, you can already start to see it, but you can see that I didn't go to the entire edge of this section. When I don't go to the edge of the section, it's gonna leave that harsher line right there, and sometimes that's the look you're going for, and sometimes it's not, which is why I just wanted to show you both. So you can go to that edge and it'll just make sure that it cleans up all those lines and you won't see where the paint ended. So what I say when I mean I go to the edge is if I were to paint inside this little hexagon honeycomb right here, I would paint all the way of the entire shape. Okay, so whether that's just adding some water in or adding some more color in, I would paint through the whole shape just so I can avoid having this harsh line. If I want that harsh line, then I'm just gonna paint, see how I did just this inside shape, or just this little, those little dots and that little accent right there. That's gonna give me that kind of look, or this kind of look where you have that hard line, all right? Another way we can get those hard lines, get some cool blooms, is this one's still a little bit wet. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of color right there. And what's gonna happen with this color, because this side's wetter and this side's drier, is it's gonna start to bleed out like these, but it's gonna give me some cool darkness and lightness in my color versus this darkness and water in my color here, okay? So there's a couple different ways to do that. Anyways, I think these are some awesome, great beginner techniques. Let's just do one more. We're gonna do a wash, okay? So a wash is just taking a light amount of color, and I'm gonna show you two ways to do this. The first way, I'm gonna take this dark color right here, and I'm gonna take more water, so this is just water, and I'm gonna pull the color around, okay? So when I pull the color around, it gives me that nice light wash, okay? When I do washes, I like to keep my paint going in the same direction. So I'm not gonna go side to side and then also up to down, because you're probably gonna get a line. It might be a lot lighter, but you'll probably get some lines like this that you may or may not want in your final painting. Another way to do it is to actually just take that color and go in with the color that you want. So I'm taking that light blue color, and I'm just doing that light blue color every time I put down some paint and spreading that around to create a nice wash. Usually washes are done in a lighter color, but you can do a wash in a darker color. Just know that when you are painting with watercolor, it's you can't put a lighter color over the top of a darker color. So when we paint, we do it in a specific order. We do the light colors first, and then we get the darker layers on top if there are things that need to be layered. Another thing that you want to watch out for is when your paint is not dry, it will bleed together. So for example, this paint right here is dry. So if I want to take this darker color, or even the same color, and put it around that edge, I can keep a nice, crisp, clean edge around that watercolor shape, okay? This paint is kind of medium dry, so we're gonna go around this one. And you can see, as soon as I'm going around, that color is bleeding together. You can see the dark color going into the circle there, and that's probably not what we want. So here we're gonna show you against this water, so water is not dry as well. So if I stay away from my water, we keep that nice crisp line, but if I go in and I go and I touch that water at all, even the tiniest bit, you can see the water is starting to suck in that paint, and the water is also starting to go into the paint. So the paint will bleed together and you'll lose that crispness of the line if you're going for the crisp. Okay, if you're not going for the crisp and you want it to bleed together, do exactly this. But if you're going for that crisp line, you need to make sure your paint is dry before you paint with it. A couple ways to make sure it's dry is, number one, is it shiny? You can tell these are very puddly and very wet. They're very shiny, they're not dry, okay? The next thing you can do is you can see this one doesn't look quite so shiny, right? But it's still wet. So I'm just gonna take my finger and I'm gonna touch it, okay? You can see my fingerprint popped in there. There's gonna be a tiny bit of paint on my finger. You can also touch the paper and feel the temperature of the paper, and then touch some paint. If the paint is colder significantly than the paper, your paint is not dry enough to paint through. So when I go through and I try to paint a line through here, you can see some of it's dry and some of it's still wet. And where it's wet, you lose that crispness of your line and the paint starts to bleed out, okay? So if I come up here and do this one, it's mostly dry, but it's gonna start bleeding just ever so slightly right here where it was a little colder. So you just wanna make sure that all your paint is dry between what you're painting. So now that you've learned a few techniques, go ahead and practice them. Make some cool shapes, make some cool designs, and then go ahead and get started painting. I can't wait to paint with you, so let's get started. I'll see you soon.